Hello, and welcome to show number 2607 of Eyes on Success, a weekly program empowering the visually impaired with expert advice, personal stories, and the latest in technology and accessibility. I'm Nancy Torpey.
And I'm Pete Torpey.
A large part of what I learned at the Lighthouse, this is really through dealing with people, is, you have to accept your vision loss. And then once you accept it, then, all right, how am I going to work with my daily life, make it better by things other than a cure? Really, that took me 5 years, quite frankly, to get to that point.
That's a big step for a lot of people.
It is. It's very difficult, especially if you think there should be some solution. And there's not always a solution.
There are many resources available for people with low vision or whose vision is changing. And if you're receptive to using those services, they can be of great benefit.
The Chicago Lighthouse specialists provide assistive technology and personalized guidance for people adapting to vision loss. We'll talk with provider Patrick Andrade and patient Pat Kosmerl, who you just heard, about tools, training, remote support, and the essential resources that many ophthalmologists never mention, but that can make daily life far more manageable. But first, for our tip of the week. This week's tip comes from Pat Kosmerl.
My tip is for anyone who is experiencing vision loss and maybe has been recently diagnosed with a condition where they know it might be progressive vision loss, I would just want to say to them that it will get better. If I had known 5 years ago, when I first was told I was losing my vision, that I would find people and tools and friends and professional people such as Patrick who could help you, I think I would have felt much better. So I just want people to realize it will get better. There are options out there, both personal and technical options, that will help you on your journey.
You are listening to Eyes on Success. Success, 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 success.
Let's start by meeting Patrick and Pat.
We have two guests with us today. Our first guest is from the Chicago Lighthouse. And Patrick, why don't you tell us what you do at the Chicago Lighthouse?
Hi, yes, my name is Patrick Andrade. I am the Assistive Technology and MTFL Director at the Chicago Lighthouse, which is a long way of saying that I am directing the assistive technology department that we have within our low vision clinic, and where we see about 4,000 patients a year. And I work on our e-commerce website. So taking care of all of our patients that might not be going within our doors, but also just making sure everyone's taken care of online.
You said you're the director of MTFL. What is that?
So MTFL is our acronym for My Tools for Living. So that's our store name that we've branded to, where we like to host our products for independent living as well as our assistive technologies.
Are you also a user of these technologies?
I'm actually not a user for personal reasons. I do happen to use JAWS on my computer pretty much every day just because I want to be a proficient user and know like the real life circumstances in which people come to the forums and find out tips and tricks and fixes. But I am someone within the disability community that's not a personal user of visual devices.
And our second guest is actually a user of your services. So Pat, tell us who you are and what you do.
My name is Pat Kosmerl, and I live in Chicago, and I have been a patient, client, user, whatever word you want to use, of the Chicago Lighthouse since the fall of 2020. I had excellent sight until around 2019, and to make a very long story short, after 8 months, I was diagnosed with a very rare inherited retinal disease that causes loss of my central vision. And as soon as I found out that I was losing my central vision, I called my family, and then I called a friend of mine who is completely blind. She's in Minneapolis, and she mentioned the Lighthouse in Minneapolis. And I said, well, there's got to be one in Chicago. And that's how I got introduced to the Lighthouse. And I have been using not only the services that Patrick offers in the assistive technology area, but also meeting with a low vision specialist doctor, the occupational therapist, and also a therapist. So it's really been a long and wonderful journey working with the Lighthouse.
So Pat mentioned the Lighthouse in Minnesota and somebody who knew about that suggesting that she'd find one in Chicago. What is the relationship, Patrick, between the Chicago Lighthouse and all of these other lighthouses around the country?
That is a great question. I was also just as confused when I first joined the Lighthouse back as a volunteer in high school. And so what it really means to me is that we're all in the same community, facing the same mission. And although we might not be affiliated, the Lighthouse kind of seems like almost a franchise model for serving those who are blind and visually impaired or low vision or having disabilities, and as well as veterans in our case of the Chicago Lighthouse. And so they've been around for so long. Ours is hitting our 120th year, in fact.
We are big proponents of some of these low vision services that are around the country. And it's sad to say that many people don't even know about these resources. In fact, even some ophthalmologists we've talked to don't even know that these services exist, which is kind of sad. So tell us a little bit about your low vision services, Patrick, and what kind of services and resources that you do offer.
Yeah, so you're so right. Many times when I meet a patient, the first thing they tell me is, wow, you're the first one to say there's something we can do. Many times I hear from my doctors, there's nothing we can do. And the Chicago Lighthouse's motto is there's always something we can do. And so within our low vision clinic, we have our clinical programs such as having the low vision optometrists that are even connecting with DRS counselors. So counselors with the state that are doing job placement and training for education, as well as education services for children. We see the students that have low vision and blindness in the state for their visual doctor's appointments to see low vision optometrists. And so we go to their schools and go to them because we know how hard it is to be able to get that access many times, especially when you're a working family with a child. And so we also have our assistive technology center and our psychologists, which are able to help individuals that might need therapy, as well as we now have a social worker who's able to help individuals that might be experiencing other difficulties such as housing, so that we can find them the resources they need. Because although we know we can't do everything, there's always a place to help someone find a resource for.
So whether or not you're able to help improve somebody's vision, you're definitely able to help improve their lives and help them deal with whatever issues they have based on their vision.
Exactly. Yeah. Really just trying to find if they have some type of functional vision, helping them utilize the functional vision if that's their goal and wish. And if not, helping them train in with the tools that are going to be how they move forward with the assistive tools that we have and can showcase within our emporium of assistive technology, as we like to call it, My Tools for Living store.
And I think that's one of the major differences between a general ophthalmologist that people often see versus the resources that you provide, including a specialist in low vision ophthalmology, but also all the other services that go along with that in terms of the equipment, the psychiatrists, social workers, as you said. So you really offer a holistic approach to solving people's real life problems in terms of the tasks and things they want to do from day to day.
Yeah, definitely not just one service. It's more of like an ecosystem of support. We want to be as comprehensive as we can. And the last thing someone wants to feel is like they're being bounced around. So the less bouncing from place to place, as long as you're in one place, there's less bouncing.
Nancy and Pete, if you can allow me to jump in, what you've been talking about is exactly what I experienced. When I was told that I was losing my central vision, which was an enormous shock to me, I didn't really even understand that there is a difference between central vision and peripheral vision. It was really devastating news. I don't know what other word to use. And the ophthalmologists and neuro-ophthalmologists and retinal doctors whom I spoke to knew that what I had is not curable, right? It's an inherited disease and there is no cure for it. And so I think that what me as a patient, what I experienced is that their feeling is, well, there's nothing we can do. And so that's really the end of the conversation. And what Patrick has talked about, and your questions are directed exactly along this line, is that when I first walked into the Lighthouse and when I spoke to the low vision optometrist, Dr. Scher, the enormous relief I had was that someone was listening to me. And even though I wasn't going to have my vision cured, to use the word that Patrick used, I was on this journey and I wasn't a solo traveler. There were other people who were going to help me. And from my experience, it isn't just what Patrick has done, which has been wonderful, and Patrick's probably one of my main contacts with the Lighthouse, but I have really felt surrounded by people who want to help you and who want to listen to you, because every person with a visual impairment, it's different, and so they have to be very good listeners to understand your very specific needs.
And the surprising thing here is that you were seeing ophthalmologists to diagnose and potentially treat your condition, but it wasn't those ophthalmologists that recommended this type of service. And they just kind of said, well, there's nothing I can do. And that was it, right?
That was my experience. Now, I think what's happening, and Patrick is aware of this, but I know at least in Chicago, there is a very concerted effort to educate ophthalmologists on not just the services of the Lighthouse, but there's other organizations, that are available that they can focus on. And I have found that in my case, I worked for IBM for 40 years and I dealt with clients, and I had to be resourceful for my clients. If they had a problem, I went to some research lab to find a solution for them. And so all of a sudden I realized I was my own client trying to find resources, but I ended up finding these resources, but pretty much on my own. But I do think there's an effort being made to not have that be the case. But it's exactly what you talked about, Pete. It's that you are really kind of left to your own devices.
So tell us a little bit about your experiences. What happened when you walked into the Lighthouse, and what was your first interaction? How did it all go?
The minute I sat down with Patrick, his goal was to understand, well, what can Pat see and what can't she see? And the first thing I remember that Patrick showed me, in fact, I have it right in front of me, but was a digital magnifier, right? It's a human-wear digital magnifier, a small one. And at that point, my vision was really just affecting my left eye. I need to tell you that I walked in there with only the issue in my left eye, and then within 6 months, it was in my right eye. So I went from 20/20 vision after cataract surgery to legal blindness in a year and a half. So Patrick was really dealing with a moving target, and I was as well. So the first time I don't remember exactly what we talked about, but Patrick tried to understand what I can and cannot see. So I think after that first meeting, I bought this human wear device, and I am blinded by anything that is white or light because the cones in my eyes are dying, and that's what regulates, my ability to handle light. And this device, Patrick showed me how he can alternate the colors that are on that device. And so for me, the most comfortable color is yellow on black or orange on black. And I cannot tell you the relief of my eyeballs and the relief of my psyche in realizing that there was some sort of solution to my no longer being able to read, on paper. Now, I don't remember if it was at that first meeting, but Patrick also has been marvelous in modifying my smartphone, my tablet, and my laptop to use accessibility features. Now, some people go online and learn about that, and I am a little baby in that I like having my hand held, and Patrick has been a great help in modifying those devices. So again, it's a long answer to say his goal was to understand what can Pat see and what can't she see. And Patrick has understood immediately that for me, color and magnification and accessibility tools are really the way to make my life easier.
So this must have been really life-changing for you, learning about the adaptive equipment that was available. And this must have enabled you to do a lot of things that you couldn't do before.
Absolutely. But it was also just there is a feeling of sort of hopelessness. And not just hopeless, but what is my future going to look like? And dealing with the people at the Lighthouse makes you realize I can handle anything. And that's not totally true. Obviously, I'm not going to drive anymore, but that there are solutions to what my problems are. And I can honestly say the person that I was when I first walked in to see Patrick is not the person that I am now. And my vision, by the way, has continued to decline. So my vision is getting worse, but my ability to handle whatever challenge comes along is greater. And I can literally attribute that to Patrick and the time he's taken to understand me. I would say to anyone who wants to use the services of the Lighthouse, their ability to try to understand you as a person and you with your visual impairment is an enormous gift, And
hopefully many of our listeners can relate to what you're saying about your saga and your experiences with the Chicago Lighthouse. And for anybody who can't relate to that, hopefully by the end of this episode, they'll be motivated to find a resource akin to the Chicago Lighthouse in their area where somebody can really help them get through life.
Yes. And Nancy, I would say that I am lucky in that I live in Chicago, so I can go to the Lighthouse with my brother acting as my chauffeur. But I'm sure that Patrick can help people, even if he's not personally, present. I mean, I'm assuming that Patrick, that's something that you have done and can do.
And Pat mentioned that she lives in the Chicago area, so close to you, so she could see a lot of this equipment in person. But before we started recording this episode, you mentioned that you can also help people who aren't living so close to you and can't get to you in person. So talk to us a little about how you help people like that.
So one thing, it's like Pat was saying, it's not always just about, for us, selling a device, although we have them all around us. For people to purchase, it's really about getting to know how someone wants to live and allowing them to get the chance to know what's possible. And so that's just as possible online. What we're trying to do is beef up our YouTube page and showing them, even if they purchase it from somewhere else, how they can use it best, because we want people to have the resources and the tools. And even so, if they're not able to reach the Chicago Lighthouse, if they give us a call, which they can call us at 1-800-919-3375, we're able to connect you to someone to talk with, and so that they could find you resources maybe nearby. Or we can just set up virtual appointments, either by phone call, through email, or video call if someone prefers, and get to the bottom of what they're looking for in their everyday life, where they are in the visual spectrum, like we were discussing with Pat, whether they can see things, and if they can see a bit, whether they still want to use that functional vision, or if they have maybe a prognosis where they're going to need to think ahead based on how things are moving. And so just wanting to be there for anyone, no matter where they are, and finding them the resources, even if it doesn't have to be us directly.
So although you sell a lot of this equipment yourself, you don't care if people buy it from you or someplace else. You're basically a resource to put people in touch with these resources and let them know what's available, coach them on getting the right equipment for their level of vision, etc.
Yeah, and of course, my bosses would be upset if I am one to say, don't buy from us. But because every dollar does go to our programs. With that said, though, if you can't get it from us, that's not going to make us upset, because we're here to assist someone. And yeah, we all in the Lighthouse have that view of just trying to get someone to be able to live in the way they would like to and show them what's possible.
If I can jump in, the other thing I would say is it isn't just with Patrick. I've never felt that he is just trying to sell me equipment. Obviously, at the low vision store at the Lighthouse, there's a lot of different things. In fact, I'm a very big purchaser of their very bold pens because that's what I need to write with to see. But it's also the ability to help me understand apps that might be helpful for me. For instance, when Dr. Scher in the low vision clinic diagnosed me as being legally blind, she then immediately set up the paperwork for me to use Bard, which is the way I can now listen to books because I really cannot read them anymore. And Patrick also helped me with the Ventra app, which is the app used by the Chicago Transit Authority. And then also Patrick, knowing my love of having yellow letters on a black background, showed me an app called WeZoom that I now use to read. So it's not just equipment. You don't feel that you're going in there and being forced to buy something. It's also finding different software options or hardware options that are going to help you.
Pat just mentioned the WeZoom app for Android phones. Well, not surprisingly, iPhones have a very similar built-in magnifier app that has many of the same features.
Yeah, and with what Pat had said, one thing that I really appreciate about the work that I get to do is, yes, we're not just selling devices, we're also offering guidance on how to make the devices that people already own work better for them with their unique needs. So on our website, we even have a digital resources section where people can add to their carts helpful guides on maybe best apps for Android or iPhone. There is guides on how to set up select to speak on an Android phone so that one could use that if they're kind of in between the feature of needing full talkback or just wanting maybe a snippet of text read out loud when they can make out that heading on the screen, but just can't really read that heading with great clarity. And so it's finding those ways of mitigating having to stop using the tools and allowing it so that people can continue to use the tools in the way they'd like. And all of those resources are free online on our website. If someone's to download them, it gets sent to me and I send it out to their email.
When I first met with Patrick and he wanted to understand what my vision needs were, I also started at that point my collection of what I consider somewhat low-tech but extremely important. I have a series of tinted glasses that would put any movie star to shame, different color tints depending on the light, and also just handheld magnifiers, not digital ones, just plain old handheld magnifiers. And as time has gone on, they've gotten to be stronger for me. But again, it's not just the high-tech tools like the digital magnifier or a CCTV, which I also have, but it's really the simple things like tinted glasses and handheld magnifiers that I have spread all over my apartment.
Sometimes it's those simple things that can make our lives easier, and it's nice to know what's available.
Exactly.
It is amazing the range of solutions that are available. Many people don't even know exist. And these range from sort of high-tech solutions like the magnifying device that Pat talked about to things like the pen that writes more boldly so you can see it.
You're right. It's amazing, the range. And I hate to say that I feel lucky because I don't feel very lucky that I'm losing my vision, but I feel lucky that if it's going to happen, it's going to happen now when there's so much technology that is available that wasn't available 20 years ago.
Well, Pete's been in this marketplace for 70 years, and let me tell you, technology was not the same 70 years ago. So yeah, this is great having all this stuff available.
I was wondering, Patrick, if you could talk a little bit about how all of this is funded.
We are very fortunate at this moment where we were able to be funded through grants through the state of Illinois for the Assistive Technology Center's time. Previously, it had all been funded through generous donations of people in the Chicago area. But now, thanks to great funding by individuals that have always supported us, as well as the state of Illinois, realizing that these programs are critical in a political way that a politician would love hearing, allowing individuals who might have to resort to being on disability if they don't want to be, but then allowing them to gain the tools so that they can go through employment services or schooling and then gain back the tools that they wanted to gain in the first place, but maybe weren't able to because they didn't have the resource like the Chicago Lighthouse or a resource similar to us. And so, in the way a politician loves to hear, we're creating tax-paying citizens again.
And from the patron's perspective, is this covered by insurance or rehab services or what?
Luckily, none of the assistive technology sessions or evaluations that I have ever need to be touched by insurance. Patients can see me, and my time is always covered by grants. Those are all state-covered grants.
And if somebody wanted to avail themselves of your services, where would you suggest they start?
So if someone's ever looking for services, I always recommend they can call into our Lighthouse Tools for Living store number. For assistive technology services, you could always call into 1-800-919-3375. And we have a store lead who's able to answer during working hours and could help set you up to be connected with our scheduler, who can either schedule you for an appointment that could be virtual or in person, or they could just connect you to one of our assistive technology specialists, myself, Noreen, or Michelle, and we can speak to you about whatever your goals are and whatever questions you may have. You can also email us at store, S-T-O-R-E, at chicagolighthouse.org. That's store@chicagolighthouse.org. And you can also find us online at our mytoolsforliving.com website. That's mytoolsforliving.com.
Patrick, do you also have a social media presence?
Yes, we do. Thank you for asking. We now are on Instagram and Facebook with the name My Tools for Living.
And of course, you can find all the contact information and resources we talked about in the audio in the show notes for this episode, which is episode 2607. And remember, we're now adding transcripts along with each show. You can find that in the archives along with each show, or actually in the show notes with each show.
That's it for today's show. Next week on Eyes on Success, we'll be talking with Lynn Jensen about her recently published book entitled Best Kept Secrets for Travelers with Sight Loss. Lynn Jensen is a visually impaired nurse who enjoys traveling, and she has compiled a large list of tips and hints that you might find helpful if you want to travel yourself.
You've been listening to Eyes on Success, available wherever you get your podcasts.
For show notes, resources, and more information, visit our website at eyesonsuccess.net.
Thank you for being part of our community. Until next time, I'm Peter Torpey.
And I'm Nancy Goodman Torpey. Thank you for listening.